Okay, welcome everyone. My name's Russell Judd. My name's not really important, but maybe my background is, and where I live. My accent, for those of you who are listening overseas, is a New Zealand accent, and forgive me if that's hard to hear, but yeah, we come from a little country down below Australia. It's a separate country from Australia, and we are 12 hours time difference from Israel, so and it's almost exactly 12 hours, so yeah, as far away as you possibly can get from the land. We're in a land far off, and this information is coming to you from there. So without further ado, the first thing I'd like to do is just give you an overview. I'm looking at a thing called the Mazzaroth, and please don't switch off yet. This is a very complicated topic, and I've been studying it for a long time. And the reason being is I grew up in the church, and took 20 years, I guess. I was preaching and teaching at churches and so on, and my confusion was constantly growing. That was what I knew internally, because I was reading the Word, and what was being said over the pulpit wasn't sort of gelling and matching up. And I'm being totally honest here. I used to preach, and I actually knew that what I was talking about, there was confusion in it, and that was quite troubling to me, and some trials in my life stopped me dead in my tracks. And essentially I didn't throw God under the bus at the time. I didn't question His sovereignty. I had to throw myself under the bus, because I knew that the confusion was my problem, and seeking the truth meant that I had to dig very deep, and I had to be very honest with myself about what I was thinking, doing and teaching. So it was just a very strange time in my life, and what came out of it has just been absolutely staggering. Now, I couldn't really witness to people. I couldn't talk to them about my faith, because I knew that if I had confusion, then I was really just sharing things, sharing that confusion out, and I was just using my, what I call Christianese, and all the little catchphrases that we have, and there had to be something more honest, more full of integrity. When I moved in with some very clever Harvard University scholars, and talking with certain people who were from the Hebrew culture and so on, who were pagans. I can call them pagans, for people who don't believe in God. They had some very strong arguments. Yes, the Bible is written with man's hands. That's how we have an English translation. That's how we have Chinese translations. That's how we have all the different translations. So if you really want to argue hard, yes, the Bible and the words themselves have been written down by man's hands, and so therefore for certain people who want to argue that way, there's some difficulties. So there has to be something, if God is God, there has to be something far more profound out there that declares His sovereignty, His power and His might for us to find. Now, I just have to make it clear here, I'm not really doing this video for people who want to argue, want to, for the sake of saving face or their own position. I'm not making this video for you. I'll just be straight out and clear about that. You can switch off now. I'm really seeking the people who need truth. It doesn't matter whether you come from a Christian background, a Buddhist, a Muslim, Hindu, whatever. I'd especially like to direct this video at the people who live in the land of Israel right now, and have kept some very interesting knowledge. It's the oldest spoken language left, ancient language left, is the Hebrew dialect, and I'm really wanting to focus this video on you, because you know, you've done such a great job at holding on to some truths and passing them on, and with all of our faults and all of your faults, I really appreciate that you've held on to the truth for us and you've kept it. So, yeah, I'm going to move on now. Your time's precious and you probably don't know me, but this information is just astounding to me. With NASA and I guess myself, well, NASA's only really had the power to calculate this and show you what I'm going to show you in the last 15 to 20 years. So what's in here has been lost in antiquity for thousands of years, and this is only just being known now because we've got personal computing power. My Pentium chip in this computer is only big enough, has only become big enough in the last 5 or so years, maybe 10 years if you're a tech person, to be able to calculate what's going on here. This is a program I'm going to use quite a lot during the presentation. It's called Stellarium, and thank you for the people at Stellarium for making this available free to you and everyone else. This has just been a fantastic piece of software. I'm going to be using Google and other things to help people with the context. But the first thing I'm going to do is run you through how our solar system works so that we all get a good feeling for what's going on. If you can see here, I'm going to just quickly turn the lights off just a moment. If you can see on the screen, there's the sun, and it is at the centre, and we're viewing this from Earth, which is like a moving platform, and I'm going to scroll forward in days on this date time stamp, and first of all I better make sure this is easy for us to watch. So if I scroll along, you'll see that there's Mercury. It's flying along, and it's just starting to stop and go back out round behind the sun. There it goes, behind the sun, and it's now coming forward. And it has an orbit of 116 days, if I am correct. And Venus is just going around behind now and then coming forward. And Venus has a cycle of somewhere around 240 days. And so Venus is about to come back past the sun. And every now and then, every 30 days, you'll see the moon fly past. There's the moon there. Actually, I should help you out with the size of the moon. I'll give it the scale that it needs. And here's Jupiter coming along in behind. Now, Mercury is the first planet close to the sun, and Venus is the second planet out. We are the third on Earth, and Mars is the fourth. And you've seen Jupiter go past. That's the fifth, and now here comes Saturn. That's the sixth planet out, and the last one that can be discerned with the human eye. There's Mars out there. And you see what just happened between these Mercury and Venus as you're watching. It went into what you call conjunction, and that's when they come very close to each other, and they can appear as quite a bright star, a single bright star, and if it's viewed in the right time, in the right position. So hopefully you've got an understanding of how it works. There goes Mercury out the back again and coming forward. And just always remember that we're viewing this from a moving platform ourselves. We're spinning around the sun, and that's what makes the planets seem to stop and start every now and then, because in relation to us, they're kind of like when you're driving on the motorway and you're passing a car. The car you're passing seems to stop and then go backwards, but we all know that car is probably still travelling at 100 kilometres an hour. So yes, hopefully we all have an understanding of how our solar system works now after watching this. I'm going to just turn the lights back on again. So I can read. Okay, so where do we... I just want to read to you now from Genesis 1, 1:14. I'm going to cover quite a few things in the Bible, so if you've got your Bibles, it would be fantastic if you could go and get them and follow along. And I'm actually going to turn to it all for you and read it, and I'm reading from the New King James Version. Okay, Genesis 1:14. Then God said, "Let there be lights in the firmament of the heavens to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and seasons and for days and years." Now, if we were to use some of the more original Hebrew language here, it would read, "Now let them be for flag posts, if you will, and appointed times." Seasons is actually moeds, or appointed times. So if you know this passage, the sun and the moon has not yet been created yet, and so we're talking about the lights that are in the firmament that are used for flag posts and appointed times. Okay, so God is actually telling us what he thinks that these things should be for. Okay. Now, this brings us into a topic: astronomy versus astrology. Now, I have to really define this for everybody, because I know the Christian church thinks that there's a big nuclear radioactive sign over the concept of the stars and astrology and astronomy, and it all gets quite confused. Now, astronomy is the study of the stars and the heavens and the earth and the moon. It's entirely different from astrology. Astrology is the worship of the stars, the heavens. I hope we all have that distinctly different. I'm not engaged here in astrology. I'm studying the stars and what they're doing. Now, for the Hebrew culture, there's two words that are extremely similar to astrology and astronomy. Now, one is Mazzaroth and the other is Mazalot. And I'm going to read to you where they occur. If you could turn now to Job 38 and 31, just before Psalms. Job 38 and 31, starting at 31. This is God. Actually, can I ask of you if I could use God's name as written in the Aleppo Codex and the Leningrad Codex, the oldest and most reliable codexes that these Bibles are made from, records God's name, including the vowel sounds and the consonants, as Yahovah, and you can go and look at Nehemiah Gordon's work on this. But I'd like to just ask your permission to use that word, that name. It's his name's Yahovah, and he asks us to use it. He's written it 6,368 times, and yeah, I'm going to use that word now because I think there's a lot of reverence involved in doing that. Now, Yahovah is talking to Job, and he's declaring his glory to Job and his friends, and he says as part of this, "Can you bind the cluster of Pleiades, or loose the belt of Orion? Can you bring out Mazzaroth in its season, or can you guide the great bear with its cubs? Do you know the ordinances of the heavens, and can you set their dominion over the earth?" So this is Yahovah declaring this to Job as a declaration of his glory. He's saying, he says, "I, Yahovah, have created this. I've created Pleiades and Orion and the Mazzaroth." Now, the King James translators didn't know how to translate that word. It's still in the King James as Mazzaroth, and there's some speculation around its meaning. Some people think it means constellations and so on. I am actually not entirely certain as its meaning. and I'll have to just put that out there to you. But what I do know is very few people actually have a good definition of its meaning. My conjecture for you is that it's astronomy. It's the study of the stars, and the Mazzaroth is actually more than that. There's a story written in the stars, and I'll get onto the evidence for that more in a moment. But there's a story written in the stars that is highly controversial and is held by almost all major civilizations and still kept in some way to this day. And can I go to the other definition, or the other use, and it's in 2 Kings 23:5. Oops, wrong way. 2 Kings 23:5. This is talking about Hilkiah, the high priest, and what he was doing at the time. Then he removed the idolatrous priests whom the kings of Judah had ordained to burn incense on the high places in the cities of Judah and in the places all around Jerusalem, and those who burned incense to Baal, to the sun, to the moon, and to the constellations. That word is Mazalot, not Mazzaroth, Mazalot. Okay, it's very different. It's written very different in Hebrew script as well. And to all the hosts of heaven. And he brought out the wooden image from the house of Yahovah to the brook Kidron outside Jerusalem, burned it, and so on. Okay, so there's this thing, the Mazalot, which is different to the Mazzaroth. The Mazalot is being talked about in very, it's an abomination. It's an abomination along with all sorts of other worship of things. Now it talks about the worship of this, the sun god, and the moon god, or goddess, wherever she's gone. Yeah. And it also talks about worshipping the stars, and it's an abomination to do that. You're not to worship it. That's astrology. Okay, so hopefully now we have a distinct difference between this concept of the Mazzaroth and Mazalot, astronomy and astrology. Now we've got definite precedent in the word of Yahovah that astrology is bad. The Mazalot has bad connotations. Okay, so that's not what we're doing here. For any of those people who want to keep arguing that, you need to go away and do some more research. What we're interested in here is astronomy and what the Mazzaroth is and what it does. Because Yah is very interested in you, me, and every person on this planet understanding what it is. And this is conjecture as well, I like to state that, and if I'm involved in conjecture, just so that you're all clear and we're all being honest with each other, is it possible that if Yahovah says that he has declared the end from the beginning, that perhaps Adam got told a story about what the stars have to say, and then he passed that on to all of his children, Noah passed it on to his sons, and so on down through the ages, to the point that anyone who went to bed at night when there wasn't electricity that shines upon us, they laid there at night and they looked up and they told their kids the story about what's in the stars, because that's all you can see if you can't afford oil or kerosene or olive oil for your lamps and so on. So it's only in very, very recent times that we've had TV and other distractions and roofs over our heads, especially in the Western culture, which distracts us from having known this story. That's why it's lost in antiquity, and we're trying to bring it back via what we know of it. Okay, so I'm going to now read you some passages that are very important in this journey. Can we now turn to Isaiah 48 and 3. It's Isaiah 48, 3. Let me go there. Isaiah 48, 3. Okay. this is Yahovah speaking once again. I have declared the former things from the beginning. They went forth from my mouth, and I caused them to hear it. Suddenly I did them, and they came to pass. Because I knew that you were obstinate, and your neck was as an iron, or it was an iron sinew, and your brow was bronze. Even from the beginning I have declared it to you. Before it came to pass I proclaimed it to you, lest you should say, my idol has done them, and my carved image and my moulded image have commanded them. You have heard, see all this, and will you not declare it? I have made you hear new things from this time, even hidden things, and you did not know them. They are created now, and not from the beginning, and before this day you have not heard them, lest you should say, of course I knew them. Okay, it goes on, and I'll talk about this passage in a moment. Keep reading, go down to a few verses on, 12 and 14. Listen to me, O Jacob, and Israel, my called. I am he, I am the first, I am also the last. Indeed, my hand has laid the foundation of the earth, that's what we're flying on here, and my right hand has stretched out the heavens. When I call to them, they stand up together. Yeah, that'll do. The Yahovah here is telling us, he's asking us to look at these things. He's referencing them here. So you should be doing Mazzaroth. You should be doing astronomy. He's asking us to look into the heavens and see what he's saying here. He is talking about people saying, from the Sumerian culture, this is where we get the story. Or from the idols of the Greek temples, we get the story of Zeus and the gods and the heavens and the constellations. No. Yahovah is saying that I've written a story in the heavens. And I've put this stuff out there so that you will know the end from the beginning. Now, if you're an extremely scholarly person here and you're good at arguing, you will say, well, this book, these books, Moses, the Law, the Torah, the Tanakh, it was actually written after the Sumerian culture, and it was written after, so they're just copying other cultures. Well, actually, I'll give that to you. You're right. You're right. And I get that from my Harvard University friends. They argue that, and if I try and use my Christianese and my lightweight knowledge from church today, I will totally fail in trying to convince them that I serve the one true God, and that what's up here is being derived from God. They think that it could be derived from anywhere, and they put up great definitions about the difference between spirituality and religion. And religion is the man-made principles and precepts. Man-made principles and precepts. And so, from former times, they would have argued better than I. But I'm telling you now that this story is waiting for someone to complete it or fulfill it prophetically. And mankind from the beginning has tried to set up leaders and rulers who fulfill this story that's up in the heavens, and I'm going to show you it in a moment. Ra, the sun god from the Egyptian culture. We've got Nimrod, Babylonian culture, and his son Tammuz was said to be the sun god, born of his mother Esther, the bare-breasted sex goddess. and wife of Nimrod, Semiramis. She came to Earth in a moon-shaped meteor and birthed Tammuz. And as we know, they were the ones who started creating ziggurats, or pyramid shapes, and on the top is a house of worship where God sits. Possibly the Tower of Babel looked like a ziggurat. We know that Quetzalcoatl from the Mayan culture, very similar, tried to fulfill or say that he was the sun god and fulfilled what was going on here and fulfilled the story that's written in the heavens. It goes on and on, the Caesars and so on. It's everywhere. It's throughout culture, throughout all cultures. Leaders and rulers are trying to say that they are God or their chosen one, and they are going back to the heavens or have come from the heavens. It's a reoccurring theme. Why would that be? It's because mankind is constantly trying to be God and set up their own gods and try to fulfill the story that's written in the heavens. And I'm going to show you later on in this series who the person is with definitive proof. Who is the one who holds the trump card that wins the hand? Who is the one who fulfilled the Mazzaroth, or the story written in the stars? Because today, with computing power and the Pentium chip, we are the ones, the people who have lived in the last 5 to 10 years, we are the only ones who can actually go back through history and find out who it was who fulfilled this. And I'm making this point, I'm labouring this point to all of the different religions out there, Buddhism, Hindus, atheists, whatever. If you can fulfill, if your life can fulfill the story in the stars, and you can punctuate it and do the things that were prophetically declared while fulfilling the Mazzaroth, you're the winner. I know I'm not, and I know Ra isn't, and I know Tammuz isn't, and I know Nimrod isn't, and I know the Sumerian culture, none of them. There is one man who fulfills the story up here, to the minute, to the hour, and to the second, and the probability of doing so is in the billions to one. Okay, so later on I'm going to show you this in its full clear glory, and but I'm just going to read you a couple of other pieces of passage. So please don't harden your necks, and you have brows of iron, or copper, sorry, and sinews of iron, and harden your heads to this, because this is just a fantastic thing that we're allowed to know in this age because of computers. And so please don't harden your necks, especially my brothers from the land of Israel. Don't harden your heads, harden your necks here, because this is vital. Please bear with me. Keep going. Okay, so if we turn to Psalms 19 and 1. Oops. Psalms 19 and 1. Here we go. The heavens declare the glory of Yahovah, and the firmament shows his handiwork. Day unto day utters speech, night unto night reveals knowledge. There is no speech nor language where their voice is not heard. Their line has gone out through all of the earth. Their line has gone out through all of the earth, and their words to the end of the world. In them he has set a tabernacle for the sun, which is like a bridegroom coming out of his chamber, and rejoices like a strong man to run his race. Its rising is from one end of heaven, and its circuit to the other end, and there is nothing hidden from its heat. Okay, it goes on. The great prophet Daniel, he's a great prophet as well. He is talking about the heavens declaring God's glory, and that's not just pretty stars up there at night. Oh yes, they're so lovely. That's like milk and babies. If you want to start devouring the meat that comes as an adult, then we're going to have to understand what kind of glory the heavens are declaring, and the handiwork, and that it's uttering speech, and that you don't even need to speak one particular language, to see what it's saying or hearing. Do we understand this passage? There is no speech nor language where their voice is not heard. Their line has gone out through all the earth, and their words to all of the world. Okay, so the Chinese, our brothers in China, they can understand this because it's pictures, it's words, and it's declaring something. And our brothers in Israel, our brothers and sisters in New Zealand, everywhere throughout the earth, no matter what language you speak, you can see when this declares somebody's glory. Yahovah's, or God's glory. And I'm going to show you who this person is, what happens soon. Okay, so here's another place, Psalms 89:37. That's Psalms 89:37. Psalms 89:37. Psalms 89:37. It shall be established forever like the moon, even like the faithful witness in the sky. Faithful witness in the sky? We're definitely not talking about astrology here, we're talking astronomy. Okay, so somehow we've got a faithful witness in the sky, even like the faithful witness in the sky. Not the moon. The moon is a faithful witness, but there's something else going on here that is a faithful witness. Okay. Interesting. What about? Okay, so from here on, we have lots of other verses and so on, and you can go and dig them out for yourself. Now a great sign appeared in heaven. Da 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 da. Where are you supposed to be looking? Here on earth, or up there? Mazzaroth. Okay, so we have a lot of this going on in the Bible. In fact, it's almost on every page there are references to it if you know what you're looking for. And if you don't know what the Mazzaroth is doing, then, okay, so you might get lost in some of this words, and you may not understand books like the Revelations of Yeshua. That's another name I'm going to use, if you would permit me, as his name's not Jesus. There is no J in the Hebrew language, and the letter J was invented about 600 years ago. And Yeshua means God saves us. So that's his name, that's what's written, and that's what I call him. Feel free to use whatever word you like to use, but yeah, I'm using Yeshua instead of Jesus. Okay. I just want to show you on this program, we can put in these things. First of all, on this program, I'm going to put in the sky, and I'm putting the land. Down here in the bottom corner, you can see that I've placed myself in Jerusalem, or Jerusalem. Don't worry about the date timestamp for now. That's what it looks like to us. Because I'm 12 hours ahead of Israel, we're looking at around about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Okay, no, sorry, 5 o'clock in the afternoon. What am I saying? 12 hours. 5 in the morning, sorry, rises in the east. The sun's rising in the east. Okay, yeah, 12 hours is 5 in the morning. So when I take away the atmosphere, we get to see the stars in behind the daylight, and I can take away the earth to get a better picture of what's going on. Now if I run through, like I was before, and just roll the days, you'll notice that there are some pictures. There's a set of scales there, of balances, and a scorpion, and then there's a bowman, and what they call the water goat. That's the sun passes over, and then the water bearer, and then there's the fish tied together, and here comes a lamb or a ram and a bull. That little cluster of stars in the middle of the bull is called Pleiades, and Belt of Orion is down below him. There's the twins, referenced in Acts as being the figurehead of a boat. There's the crab, the lion, And we're back to the Virgin again. Now, why? You've got to ask yourself, this what they call the ecliptic. The word is the ecliptic. It's the plane at which all of the planets rotate around the sun. Well, there's 12 pitches that travel in behind that ecliptic. So if we just stop here on the Virgin, some call Virgo, and in the Hebrew culture Betula, all through history, certain women or certain people have said that they are the virgin that is birthing a child, or I am birthed of a virgin. Why are they doing that? Why is everyone trying to compete for that title? You have to ask yourself why that is. And yes, it may be that it may be that one culture like the Sumerians mentioned it. It also might be that the very first man was told by God, by Yahovah, what that little cluster of stars is all about. What this star here, the branch, Samak, is all about, and what these other clusters of stars mean. Now these ones out here, you can see this bird here for example, there's up to sort of around 88 different other star signs, and a lot of them are really what you'd call pagan. We do know from Job that Yahovah is declaring that what Pleiades means and Orion. He's already named those clusters and has given them purpose. He's named the Mazzaroth. Now the Mazzaroth is a story that relates to these 12 clusters of stars. And in the Zodiac, which is actually a Mazalot or an astrology term, the signs of the Zodiac, we've got other names for them, right? So Libra, Virgo, Leo, and so on. But there's a totally different set of names through many, many cultures for these. You know, we've all got to ask ourselves why the Māori in New Zealand refer to Pleiades as 6 women. Why the Chinese, a totally different language in a totally different place with very little connection whatsoever to Māori, also name that little cluster of stars, Pleiades, as 7 women. Why do the Hebrews do it? Why do the Greeks call it 7 women? It is absolutely astounding why these names have held and crossed cultures. And that blows me away, why they are still kept as the same names. I mean, it could have been 7 anything. Fireflies. Could have been 7 plates for the dinner table. It could have been 7 anything. Well, why are all the cultures recalling Pleiades, for example, as 7 women? Why is this, across cultures, recorded as the Virgin? We have to all ask ourselves that. Okay. So yes, it might have come from a place that is not Christian or not Hebrew. I'll still leave you with that for now until we look further into the life of a particular person who fulfilled this story. Okay, and I'll show you the great weight of evidence. I'd also like to just quickly acknowledge some other people, videos and so on. The Star of Bethlehem is a great video. People like Michael Rood have done work on this. There's actually a huge amount of information that I've drawn on to come to this position, and I wish we would all work together and bounce ideas off each other and talk about this together so that we could bring it out in its full richness. And I'm trying to do that in the best way I can at the moment for you. Okay, so we're going to start getting into the nitty-gritty of this. This is where it starts getting really fun. Okay, and we're going to look at how amazing this is. Okay, one other piece of information first is up here, and put it right in the front here. There's a date and time concept. Okay, and this here is the Gregorian calendar, and that time stamp there is running based on the orbit of the Sun. and it is also running off my computer's clock. So we've already talked about this is actually 5, well nearly 6 in the morning in Jerusalem, but this is running off my date stamp in my computer. So don't worry about this at all. It's the Gregorian calendar. It was put in there by Pope Gregory. It's a man-made principle and precept. There's another calendar, as an example, in 356 AD that was established by the Sanhedrin as they were disbanded, and even to this day in Israel, what we would call the leaders, the scribes and so on, will testify to all the world that the Hebrew calendar is not actually correct. It's not the way God told us to follow it, and it's not the way it's written in the Torah, and they are correct in that. They made their own calendar. They call what God calls the Feast of Trumpets, or Yom Teruah. They call that Rosh Hashanah. They've renamed it. And that's wrong. That's just straight out wrong, and they know it, and they have told everyone. So if you're following the Hebrew calendar, that allows you to pre-predict time many years in advance, just like Pope Gregory does here. He's allowing you to plan your Christmas holidays in 2015, if you like, based on his calendar. Well, God's calendar doesn't work like that. God's calendar works, or time clock works, so that every man on the face of this earth, regardless of whether they own a calendar, a Rolex or a cell phone, will be able to know roughly what day and time they're on. So God uses a agricultural, lunar or astronomical, so agricultural, astronomical calendar, and it's also written in the Bible as to how you follow it. For example, in Exodus and Deuteronomy and Leviticus, it says the first month is the month of Aviv, and that is a term defined by the barley being ready. And you can't give your first fruits offering unless the barley is ready. God says this month, Aviv, is the beginning of your months. So if you're trying to say that the Rosh Hashanah or Yom Teruah is the head of the year, you're wrong. God says you're wrong. And I just have to put that out there straight. Yom Teruah is an appointed time. Remember, God says that these are for appointed times and flag posts. So this clock here means nothing. I'm just going to use it to reference certain times for you in our current Babylonian context, our current Gregorian calendar context. You have to ask yourself why the days are named after different gods: Moon Day, Sun Day, Saturn Day, and so on. Yeah, we've been sold a lie, and I'm trying to help you put it straight here. So, and the day starts in Hebrew culture. A day starts and ends at sundown, not in a random time in the middle of the night. It's at sundown, and it's the renewed moon. So when you see the moon, you shall blow the trumpet. And for all those people who follow dark moons out there, dark moon cycles, you're wrong. You can't blow your trumpet if you can't see a moon. Okay, so the only moon you can see and know when it has renewed itself is a sliver. Anyone who's following the dark moon is going to get themselves all wrong in terms of times and dates. And lastly, you cannot predict one day or even 1 month ahead using Yah's calendar, because he needs you to sight the slither of a new moon for your month to begin. And so there's plus or minus 48 hours. And there's also, you cannot declare when the barley is going to be Aviv. When the barley goes Aviv, then you look for the new moon, and that is the beginning of your month. Okay, the beginning of your month, when the barley is Aviv. And that's how every poor subsistence farmer in the world knows how to follow his calendar, God's calendar, because it's an agricultural and astronomical one. The clock is written in the heavens for everyone to follow, regardless of how rich you are. And that's what's so beautiful about it. And you don't need a calendar. Okay, so that's just explaining some things around the calendar. I'm not going to pay this date any weight, except it's a marker that you understand in our pagan culture that we have today. Okay, so there's no weight to this whatsoever. Let's go now back in history. And we're going to go to a date which is -2 BC. And it is a very important day. It's Yom Teruah. We don't actually know if it's Yom Teruah or not. It is conjecture, because we weren't there citing the Aviv Bali. No one recorded that the Bali was in Aviv on this year. And it's very difficult, unless somebody out there knows and can fill me in. I don't actually know whether this is Yom Teruah, but it's highly likely that it is, because it's the right time of year and the sun is in the sky for almost the exact same number of minutes that it will be this year for Yom Teruah. So there's some conjecture there, but it's pretty close. So this is a day here. It's a very important day, but I'm going to wind it back 2 months so we can see what happens. And I want to watch this, Jupiter. We're going to focus on Jupiter, and we're going to watch what Jupiter does over the next few days and months. So Jupiter is flying along, and everything's going as normal, and suddenly something becomes extremely prophetic. You notice, if you were a person who watched the stars and followed the Mazzaroth story in its prophetic form, this particular thing that's happening in the heavens right here stops you in your tracks. And the reason being, well, the reason we know this is there are a group of people called the Magi, and they came from Babylon. And it's conjecture that they are actually the end-time prophet, Daniel. They were his great-great-great-great-great-grandkids. And they've been taught and passed on through the ages how to watch the Mazzaroth, read it and follow it, and to keep very close eye on what was going on, because they are waiting for a person to turn up on Earth who is very important. And when they see this, when they see Jupiter pull up inside Leo, they make notes about this. And this particular thing that's going on is hugely prophetic. Leo is the king constellation, and it was prophesied that one would come who was of the tribe of Judah, and he was going to be a king. Okay, and that planet, Jupiter, is known as the king planet. And there's a little star just below Jupiter on the screen, just here, and its name is Regulus. And Regulus is known as the Kingmaker star. So you have got the King constellation, the Kingmaker star, and the King planet, or King star is what they knew it as, have all come up together. But that's not really the profound thing. The profound thing is what's going on down here with Venus, and Virgo, and Mercury, and the Sun, and the Moon. This is fulfilling a prophecy, an ancient prophecy of the one who would come, that is the branch. And in Revelation, John, the revelation of Yeshua, in Revelation 12, reading from 1, now a great sign appeared in heaven. Oh, okay, so we've got to be looking in heaven to be able to see this great sign. A woman clothed with the sun, the moon at her feet, and on her head a garland of 12 stars. And being with child, she cried out in labour and in pain to give birth. Okay, this is what's going on right here in this picture. And this has stopped the Magi in their tracks. And I want to tell you why exactly, if you know what you're looking for. The probability that the moon is at her feet is, well, that's there once every month, right? So that's 1 over 30. The probability that it's happening in this cluster here is once every 12 months, so 1 over 12. 1 over 30 times 1 over 12. This has an orbit of 4,430 something days, so 1 over 4,430. 1 over 224, 1 over 116. If you times all those probabilities together, this is 1 day out of 42 billion that this would be fulfilled. And if we divide that by 365 days, this happens once every 111 million years. This can be fulfilled. And that's staggering to me. But you could just say that it's a random thing being made up in people's heads, okay, that this is random, and that may be true, because but the Magi did set off. They did set off. They wondered, is this the thing that we've been looking for all of our lives? And I'm going to deal with how this becomes even more profound as we go on. But for those discerning out there, you're going to say, well, how can you see all that? Because the sun's up and you can't see the stars. Well, you're right. Okay, so we'll put in the land and we'll show you what they actually saw. So over the last few months, they've been watching Jupiter come closer and closer. Every morning they wake up to do their morning observations, and then they do a set of evening observations. So they see Jupiter flying in with all the other planets, and they're making their notes every day, and this happens. And that's in the morning. This is what they're waking up to with the atmosphere in. You know that this planet here is known as the day star, or the bright morning star, and so that's sitting right on Venus's shoulder, or the Betula's shoulder. So they're making these recordings before the sun comes up. You can still see it, and a few minutes later it gets too bright for us to see anything. Okay, so the recordings stop. But they have seen that all of these planets are in place. They would have seen Mercury as well. So now we forward on during the day, and they're quite excited because remember this is Yom Teruah, and they're waiting to sight the slither of the new moon so they can blow their trumpets. You can't actually see that moon because you can't see the moon in the day when it's just a slither. You have to wait for the evening. And as the sun goes down, they get an opportunity. Can you see it here? You get an opportunity when the stars start coming out to see a slither of the new moon. Okay, so there's the moon, and you'd be blowing your shofar or your trumpet at this point and celebrating, and it's highly, highly likely that if the Magi knew what to look for in the Mazzaroth and had been trained to do so over the years, they also would have known the appointed times, the 8 feasts. So they would have been celebrating Yom Teruah that day, and it would have been cause for extra celebration, and they would have all been talking about what they'd seen over the last few months as Jupiter pulled up into the constellation, the Lion, the tribe of Judah, and up next to what we call Virgo or Betula. So they would have been very, very excited about this day. And around the party that night, after the blowing of trumpets and so on, they would have been discussing plans as to whether or not they should or shouldn't get a group of soldiers together to accompany them 1,000 kilometres up to Jerusalem, to see whether or not what they had just seen that morning was actually going to come to pass to be the birth of the Messiah, that they were the ones who were going to see this or live in the time when the Messiah was on earth. So it was very exciting. They probably drank a bit too much that night, and Okay, so let's just say though that the Sumerians had put this in everyone's heads, and it's still, you know, 1 in 111 million chance. You know, it may or may not be the one. You know, that might not be good enough chance for you. So there's got to be a child. That child has got to do some pretty amazing stuff during their life, and that child's life has got to continue fulfilling the Mazzaroth. Okay, so just so you can see, I'm going to take the land and the sky away again, and we're going to go day by day over the next few months as they travel. And I'll just pull it back a couple of months so you can see what Jupiter was doing during the coming up to this day. So here we are again. We're having it pull up into line the tribe of Judah, and there's the day right here where Venus, the mother star, mother planet, is ordaining Virgo on the shoulder as the Virgin. And Mercury, the child planet, or child star, is on her arm. She's clothed with the sun, and the moon was at her feet, right? And Jupiter, the king planet, is now pulling up next to the kingmaker star in line the tribe of Judah. So we keep watching over the next 9 months. So Jupiter's past Regulus, and for some strange reason it seems to be slowing down, and it stops. Did you know that happens? Well, that's actually a function of us on Earth and in relation to Jupiter and our orbits. And Jupiter comes back and it passes the Kingmaker again. So that's twice. Once, twice, and it stops again. How does it do that, you ask? And then look, it comes back for a third pass. Third pass. So that's King Constellation, King Planet, King Maker, King Number, crowned 3 times. So if you're riding your camel across the desert with all of your soldiers, and every day you're making your morning and evening observations, and you are watching Jupiter go into retrograde over the King Maker star, this is profound to you. It's absolutely astounding. Every night you're excited over the campfire when you pull up for the night. And if you notice, up here on this old Pope Gregory's timestamp, we're nearly 9 months on. And here comes Venus, the mother. And the mother pulls up right next to Jupiter. They're right there next to each other. Now this is going to be a really important moment, but what I'm going to do, now that I've explained how this is working for the Magi, I'm going to take you back again 9 months. Go back 9 months. Remember this? Okay. And I'm going to start reading to you. I'm sorry for all those people out there who come from the Hebrew culture and think that the Septuagint books are some sort of profanity, but they are a historical record, and it would be really great if you could just bear with me for a moment while I read from these books as to what was happening at the same time. If you will please come to Luke chapter 2, and we are going to begin the Christmas story. Now, I struggle to use that word because the word Christmas, the whole concept of December the 25th is just a nonsense. December the 25th is Ra's birthday, it's Tammuz's birthday, it's Nimrod's birthday. Every god under the sun wants to somehow have his birthday on the one of the solar equinoxes, and it's just straight wrong that Yeshua was born anywhere near that day. He was born on a very important Hebrew day, not a pagan day when we used to sacrifice babies to Chemosh by putting them in the lap of the stoked iron Chemosh, burning with heat so hot that it would incinerate the babies, while he was wearing his Phrygian cap. Yeah, so why are we celebrating Yeshua's birthday on that horrific pagan date? And while I'm there, why do we even think that Yeshua's life has got anything to do with the bare-breasted goddess Estar, sex goddess? Goodness knows. You know, Easter eggs are actually a symbol of the requests you make to Estar when you sacrifice your children, and you dip an egg-shaped object in the child's blood and put it on your mantelpiece for the following year. And it's just horrific that we even associate Yeshua with those pagan festivals. And people in the Middle East know what the goddess Estar is. They still sell goddess Estar statues in the marketplaces today, and they think that Christians are just nuts trying to, we're just ridiculous idiots, trying to associate Yeshua, or God, with Estar. There's just no connection. So anyway, what I'm trying to say to you is, you look at that date stamp up there, you look about what's going on. It's not his birthday. The Feast of Trumpets is his birthday. And if we go to Luke 2, right at this moment, Luke 2, chapter 2, and we know we have some other references. I'm not going to go into it here, but it talks about how there was a great decree went out from Julius Augustus that the world should be registered. The census took place while Quirinius was governing Syria. You can go and do your history on this, and you can find that these two dates actually line up quite nicely. And that's why those things are put in the Bible for you, is so that you can line up Yahovah's story, the story of Yeshua in the sky, the Messiah. You can line them up with other cultures, Syria's culture and the culture of the Romans in the day, and to see whether or not you've got the right days. Anyway, I won't go into that, but what happens right at this moment is that that Joseph and Mary are going down to Bethlehem. Joseph also went up from Galilee out of the city of Nazareth into Judea to the city of David, which is called Bethlehem, because he was of the house and lineage of David, to be registered with Mary, his betrothed wife, who was with child. So it was that while they were there, the days were completed for her to be delivered. Okay, so we all know what happened, right? She put him in a manger. Now, there were in the same country shepherds living out in the fields, keeping watch over their flock by night. And behold, an angel of the Lord stood before them, and the glory of the Lord shone around them, and they were greatly afraid. Then the angel said to them, "Don't be afraid, for behold, I bring you good tidings of great joy, which will be to all people. For there is born to you this day, in the city of David, a Saviour, who is Christ the Lord. And this will be a sign to you." A sign? You will find a babe wrapped in swaddling clothes, lying in a manger. And suddenly there was an angel. Suddenly there was with the angel a multitude of the heavenly hosts, praising God, saying, "Glory to God in the highest, and peace on earth, goodwill toward men." So it was, when the angels had gone away from them into heaven, that the shepherds said to one another, "Let us go now to Bethlehem, and see this thing which has come to pass, which the Lord has made known to us." And they came with haste, and found Mary and Joseph, and the babe lying in a manger. Now, when they had seen him, they made widely known the saying which was told them concerning the child, and all those who heard it marvelled at those things which were told them by the shepherds. Okay, firstly, did anywhere there was a star mentioned? No. The shepherds didn't see the star. That wasn't the thing that they were following. They were just told by the angel to go to Bethlehem to see the babe wrapped and lying in a manger. Now, I laboured at that point there about everybody being made widely known and everyone marvelling. Now, why is that? Have you ever asked yourself why that is? And I'll tell you why, and I won't just go to it yet just now, but John the Baptist, as we know him in Christian circles, or Johannan ben Zechariah, because he's the son of Zechariah, Johannan ben Zechariah. It says in Luke 1:64 about Zechariah, immediately his mouth was opened and his tongue was loosed, and he spoke, praising God, Yahovah. Then fear came on all those who dwelt around them, and all these sayings were discussed throughout all the hill country of Judea, and all those who heard them kept them in their hearts, saying, what manner of child will this be? Okay, so 6 months earlier, tongues loosed, amazing. One of the priests, his tongue is loosed. He's got a baby, and it's a crazy kind of baby because it's been born in miraculous circumstances. And there's miracles wrapped all around it. They were old when they had the baby, and this crazy thing with his tongue. And so that's why everyone was marvelling. What manner of child was this? 6 months later, shepherds, baby in a manger, angels. Now when they had seen it, they made widely known the saying which was told them concerning this child, and all those who heard it marvelled at those things which were told them by the shepherds. Why? Because there's 2 possible messiahs at the same time in the land of Judea, and everyone is marvelling. So, right now, while this is happening, Mary is giving birth to Yeshua. While this thing is happening in the heavens, on Yom Teruah, we are seeing the birth of Yeshua. Okay, and a few days later, shepherds turn up to see Mary with probably pretty sore down below and a brand new baby. Mary probably kicked them out only a few minutes. She didn't want some stinky shepherds hanging around. It's very practical. You know how these things roll. So, but the shepherds are delighted because it's exactly the way the angel described it. Okay. Then we roll on 9 months, as I showed you. Jupiter going backwards and forwards. And here comes Venus, the mother planet. Okay, this is absolutely beautiful. People talk everywhere about the star. Some say it's a comet, and some say it's something big and miraculous, and some people say that it's a mystery planet, and there's everything out there on the internet about this. Let's get over all the silly conjecture about this and just look at the Mazzaroth. We have, in the last few years, we can clarify all of these things. If you just put yourself in the land on the day and you do things in a very practical manner and you follow the Bible, the story of Luke and the story of Matthew, you follow it closely, it will lead you to the truth, and it's beautiful and it's very simple to understand. Jupiter, let's go in here and have a look. Jupiter and Venus come together in the heart of the King constellation, on the Lion. Let's roll this on a few minutes. Oops. These 2 planets, Jupiter, that planet, the king, that they've been watching for 9 months while they're going through the desert get crowned 3 times in the King constellation. That planet they've been watching when they lived in the east and have come to Jerusalem. That planet they've watched rise out of the east every day has Venus pull up alongside it. Look at it. They are so close together. They don't cancel each other's light out, they add to each other's light. This here, other than the moon and the sun, is the brightest thing anyone's ever seen in the heavens in their lifetimes. You don't get many conjunctions that are this bright and this amazing. This here is the brightest star that anyone has ever seen. Okay, yes, maybe, you say, I can hear you saying, maybe. Let's keep following this on. Remember, it's 9 months afterwards. Okay, so we're still maybe not convinced that we've seen this very rare thing, and then 9 months later, this happens, this conjunction, a very bright star. You still might not be convinced about what's going on here, and I'll keep reading to you. So please turn now to Matthew 2. Now, I just have to make a little point here. Since the Leningrad was opened up, Russia was opened up, sorry, a library in Leningrad was made available to the world, and in that library in the 90s, photographs of a Hebrew version of Matthew, or several of them, were taken. Matthew, there is now 28 manuscripts of a Hebrew version of Matthew available, and people have only been speaking and reading Hebrew in the modern times and able to decipher some of these for us in the last maybe 20 years. And we now know there are 28 manuscripts of a Hebrew version of Matthew, which is unmistakable. It's unmistakable. If you know Hebrew and how the language sings and flows, it's unmistakable that Matthew was written in anything other than Hebrew. The 5,000 or so Greek manuscripts of Hebrew are all copies. Greek manuscripts of Matthew are all copies out of Hebrew. And we have, if you're honest with yourself, when you read Matthew, there are some paradoxes that come just straight out of the Word. For example, it says Moses sits in the seat. The Pharisees sit in the seat of Moses. Do what they say, but don't do what they do. That's a paradox. Do what they say, but don't do what they do. Well, the Hebrew version of Matthew says this: the Pharisees sit in the seat of Moses. Do what he says. Moses says. Don't do what they do. Don't do what the Pharisees do. And then the paradox is gone, and it lines up. Do you understand? And there are so many things like that that come out of Hebrew Matthew, and they're beautiful. And we really do need to replace our Greek versions of Matthew with the Hebrew one, because some beautiful things come out of it. Now, anyway, I'm going to read to you from Matthew 2. Now, after Yeshua was born in Bethlehem of Judea, in the days of Herod the king, behold, Magi, wise men, from the east came to Jerusalem, saying, Where is he who has been born King of the Jews? For we have seen his star in the east, and have come to worship him. Okay, this is what's happening 9 months on. So 9 months ago, Mary gives birth. She goes through her month of uncleanness, as was the custom. She goes through her Yeshua is circumcised. They take him up and dedicate him to the temple. They don't travel back to their home because it's a 2-month journey there and back. And it's winter time. Who would travel over winter with a newborn baby? That's why they stay in Bethlehem and around Jerusalem. They also, it is their custom to always go to the Passover feast and the spring feast. So they are waiting for that. Why go home just to come back again a few months later? You can see why they're still there a month later, 9 months later. Anyway, the wise men turn up and they start asking questions. Where is the one? And then it says, when Herod the king heard this, he was troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. Why are they troubled? Well, there's supposed to be two messiahs that people are all talking about this baby and the son of Zechariah. His tongue was loose and so on. Everyone's been marvelling for 9 months about these babies. And then these very mysterious wise people from the east turn up with their big cavalcade of soldiers. Who knows how many wise men there were with them? We only think 3 wise men because that's the story we keep getting told every Christmas. There could have been heaps of wise men. There were 3 gifts. Oh, anyway, see all the funny teachings we get locked into, and it doesn't actually come from the Word. So Herod is marvelling, and all Jerusalem is troubled because they've got a king already, and he doesn't like the idea that there might be another king coming in the land that the people might follow. And it says here, and when he gathered all the chief priests and the scribes of the people together, he inquired of them where the Messiah, or the Christ, the Saviour, was to be born. So they said to him, in Bethlehem of Judea, and they quote from Micah, is it? For thus it is written by the prophet, but you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are not the least among the rulers of Judah, for out of you shall come a ruler, who will shepherd my people Israel. Okay, so the scribes and the Pharisees and the teachers, they know and they tell Herod where he's going to be born. So Herod knows where he's born now. Then Herod, when he had secretly called the wise men, determined from them what time the star had appeared. Okay, so the Magi go, oh, we saw it 9 months ago. We've been travelling for 9 months, and we've been preparing and coming for 9 months. And we saw that star in the east, and we saw what happened 9 months ago. So you do know that Herod now knows how old the child is, 9 months old. And you also know why, later on, he asked for his soldiers, his brute men, to kill anything that they see under the age of 2. Because soldiers don't really know the difference between a 5-month-old and a 1.5-year-old. So he just said, kill everything under 2, so we get everyone. Okay, reading on in verse 8. And he sent them, the wise men, the Magi, to Bethlehem and said, go and search carefully for the young child, and when you have found him, bring back word to me, that I may come and worship him also. Okay, let's go now to the land and have a look. So, this is Google Earth. Thanks Google, more free software. And up here is Bethlehem. Before we do that, I'll just show you this place just up here called Jerusalem. Bethlehem. How long do you reckon it takes to travel between there and there? As the crow flies, it's about 7 k's. You walk about 5 kilometres an hour, by the way. Everybody seems to think that Herod lives in Jerusalem. And I I propose to you that that is just totally incorrect. He doesn't live in Jerusalem. Herod never lived in Jerusalem. He had his own mountain. And anyone who's been to the land knows of this fantastic place. It's called Herodion. And I'm going to pull it up for you. Come on. Herodion is... what's going on here? Herodion is a mountain. It's still there to this day, so you can go and have a look. And this is the inner the inner workings, the remnants of Herodion, where Herod lived. If you were to go there and have a look to this day, you would see something that looks like this. Some big man-made shape on the landscape. He made this mountain. I won't go into the reasons why Yeshua said, standing by the temple mount, with eyesight or visual line to this mountain, why he said you could throw mountains into the sea. That's another teaching. But essentially, this is Herod's mountain. This is where he lives, and it's no small, it's no difficult task for somebody to ride their camels 12 kilometres down this road to Herodion. So earlier in the week, Herod had asked the chief priests to come from Jerusalem down to see him and tell them where the baby was born. And so now he knows that the baby was born a couple of hours ride up the road here in Bethlehem. And then he summons the wise men down secretly. And the wise men tell him that they saw the baby 9 months ago. So the wise men make the journey down this road. And they probably arrive here for lunch, given the time spans. It's 12 kilometres. That takes you 2-3 hours on a camel. So they could have set off in the morning, they would have been there by lunchtime, they would have had a chat with Herod, and then Herod says, go and see and worship him in Bethlehem. And so this is what they do. Okay. We just watch this little animation here. So we're going to fly in to the mountain, and here we go. There's the mountain. You come down this road along here, you come over here. This road roughly follows the old track that you would have had taken. Comes up the road and into the township of Bethlehem. And when the animation stops, we'll be right on top of some old historic sites, like Bethlehem. So this journey would have taken the wise men a couple of hours. If they got their camels ready again and all their soldiers ready again, guarding the gifts that they were bringing, and the 200 or so of them, just conjecture, go with me on this, set out and they travel from the Herodion to Bethlehem, they would be around 2-3 hours in the travel, 5 kilometres. It shouldn't have taken them more than that. So, what are we looking at here? If you have a look at the symbol up here, this is the compass in Google Earth. Okay? When you get into Bethlehem and you're following that road up here, let's just zoom out a bit. As you're following this road up here, this road right here, I'm labouring this because it's so cool. You're coming up this ridge, the old ancient road. You're roughly travelling, it's not doing it for me. You're roughly travelling west. There you go, west. West out this side and east is this side. West out here, east is where we've come from. And we're travelling up this ridge line to Bethlehem on the hill. Have a look in the horizon. We're looking at the horizon. Okay. Let's put the land in and the atmosphere back. And we'll wind it back to about the time in the afternoon. It's going to be about, because I'm 12 hours behind, it's about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And the sun is about to set. And you're walking down the road 9 months later after setting off from seeing the great sign in heaven. And you had to speak with Herod, and you're a bit worried for your life, and so on. And this is what starts to happen. The sun is setting as you're riding a camel, after having lunch and so on with Herod. And the brightest star that you've ever seen in your life has formed in the sky. It's the conjunction of Venus and Jupiter. And it is following down to the horizon. You see this W? West. You see on Google Earth, we're looking perfectly due west as we travel up this road. And right about when they arrive at 6 in the evening, it's dark now, and they're travelling into town. They're following a star right to the horizon. And I'll read it to you exactly as it says. When they heard the king, they departed, and behold, the star, which they had seen in the east, went before them, till it came and stood over where the young child was. You don't even have to think up strange and unusual scenarios with shepherds and wise men and babies in mangers and so on. Because, look, it's right here. You travel up the road, that's west. The house, if you're travelling on this road, coming up this mountain, up the old path, you can see how that star is almost touching the house where the baby lives. It would be easy to see how that could happen, just as it says in Matthew. They saw the star, they rejoiced with exceedingly great joy. That star led them, Jupiter and Venus led them to where the king was. In the king constellation, king star, with the mother, the king and the mother, right there in a little house. It's just a beautiful story. But wait, it gets quite traumatic from this point. And when they had come into the house, they saw the young child with Mary his mother, and they fell down and worshipped him. And when they had opened their treasures, they presented gifts to him, gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Then, being divinely warned in a dream that they should not return to Herod, they departed. They went up the old road to Jerusalem, because that road goes back out here and back up, if we were to follow it, and back off to Jerusalem, and they would have left that way, because they would have been very fearful of going back down the road towards the Herodium, because in the morning Herod might have been able to find that they had deceived him, and their horse tracks would have led back to Jerusalem and shown that they didn't come back to Herodium, and there could have been a fight on their hands. That's why they went via another way, because they didn't want to meet Herod on the road or for him to track them down. So they got a good head start on him. Okay, if we keep reading, the Magi were wise, and they took off another way. Now if we keep reading, now when they had departed, behold, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream, saying, "Arise, take the young child and his mother, flee to Egypt, and stay there until I bring you word, for Herod will seek the young child to destroy him." When he arose, he took the young child and his mother by night and departed for Egypt. And they departed for Egypt. So that same night, it's an action-packed night. It's not some still, quiet, silent night. This is a loud, get out of here, warnings, death night. Because the wise men have just taken off. Mary and Joseph and Yeshua are left with all the gold, frankincense and myrrh and a donkey. And they are warned in the night divinely and told, you've got to get out of here because Herod is hot on your tail. Because in the morning, early in the morning, then Herod, when he saw that he was deceived by the wise men, was exceedingly angry. And he sent forth and put to death all the male children who were in Bethlehem and all the districts from 2 years old. There's that number. We know why, because the Magi had been travelling for 9 months. 2 years old and under, according to the time which he had determined from the wise men. Then it was fulfilled that which was spoken by the prophet Jeremiah, saying, "A voice was heard in Ramah, lamentation, weeping, and great mourning, Rachel weeping for her children, refusing to be comforted because they are no more." So, the story that's in the Bible, Matthew and Luke, and Mark and John, perfectly matches. It perfectly matches the Mazzaroth. It's prophetic. It lines up with the Bible and the Torah. It lines up with the Mazzaroth. And it lines up with the appointed times. That's 3 witnesses. It says by two or more witnesses a matter should be established. And I've just given you 2 or more. So that's his birth. Let's just say it's a really, really unusual coincidence that the Word of God, including Matthew, Mark and Luke and John, and the Torah, and the Mazzaroth, lining up with the appointed feast days, Yom Teruah and so on. Let's just say that's a giant coincidence. Let's just say. Let's now take you to another really important date in Yeshua's life. This was his death. Now there are more, but this is just too rich to be able to cover off it for you in such a short series. There's so much information to talk about here, but some people are saying that Yeshua's ministry or his life is only around 31 years. Well, the Mazzaroth refutes that. Also, the Catholic Church has added years by adding verses in the Bible to make it seem like 70 years in 70 AD. The mantle was passed from God to the Pope and to the Roman Catholics. And that's just straight out wrong too, because the Mazzaroth shows that they're wrong, and they've put themselves forward too many years, so that Yeshua, by their reckoning, is dying when he's around 36. And the Mazzaroth proves that wrong. The Catholic sun god worship. I'm sorry, people, if you're watching from the Catholic Church, you've got yourself some pretty horrific pagan worship going on. And it would be great for you to come out of that deception like I had to come out of mine. So we're going to go to 32 AD on Pope Gregory's calendar. And we know that around about the month of March, April, May, we have a feast day called Passover, Pesach. And we also know that this man Yeshua was prophesied to be the Passover lamb. This man, the Messiah, Yeshua, he came to fulfill the first 4 feasts, and he's returning to fulfill the last 4 feasts. And if you don't know what those feasts are, you should find out about them, because his life was all about fulfilling them to the minute, hour and second. So on this date stamp here, we know that around about that time of year we have Passover. So we would sight the barley of Eve, and then we'd see the new moon, and it says that then you count 14 days from the sighting of the new moon. And this is the Passover. So what's happening in the heavens around about that time? Now I'm going to take away here the land so we can find some things. And oh, wrong way. Just zoom in there so you can all see what's happening. This is profound. So roughly 32 AD, which is about this controversial time when this controversial man was controversially dying, round about 32 AD, which incidentally is around about 33 years after he was born on Yom Teruah. He's dying. And it does say that he was baptized when he was about 30. Okay, so his ministry, and I agree with people like Michael Rood that his ministry was around 70 weeks. But there was a time between his baptism and the beginning of his ministry, which is around about the wine, water being turned to wine at the wedding. He lived in the land of Naphtali and Zebulun, speaking to the lost tribes who were in darkness. And it says in Yohanan that he was there was he not there for many days? So he was there for a long time. It takes you a long time to build up a ministry when you don't have the internet and so on. So Yeshua, by preaching in the temple every day and in the synagogues every day, he built up a following. So it was quite easy to say to some fishermen, "Come follow me," and they dropped everything and followed him, because this was a famous man. It's like having someone famous in the world today saying, "Come and follow me and you can be my student." Because Yeshua had to build his fame the hard way, by teaching. And I won't dwell on that point, but I'll just continue to show you what's happening in the Mazzaroth. It says quite clearly that he was put on the cross in the 6th hour, and he died on the 9th hour. And the 6th hour is midday. And if you have a look at the clock, that's based on the sun's rotation, this part of the clock, not that part, this part of the clock. This is perfectly saying at midday he died. He was being put on the cross, sorry. And look what happens. Moon is important for Israel. It's a very ominous sign for the people of Israel. And that's a people group, not a land. That's not a place. That's a people group. The blood red moon. The moon is being very ominous, and look at the star sign that it's in, or the Mazzaroth picture that it's in. Yeshua is being killed, and Israel is in the balance. It's being judged. You see that? That's absolutely profound. Now, I'll show you another interesting little thing. This is just quite nice. This is what God and the angels were probably seeing. I've now put myself on the moon, which you can do in this program, and I'm going to search for the earth. So we know that an eclipse is when the Earth goes in front of the Sun in relation to the Moon. So you could say that the blackness and the darkness of Earth is extinguishing the light. And look what's going on behind us in the picture. There's the lamb. The lamb is dying on the cross, the Passover lamb, and here's the bull that's doing it, or Satan. It's the tussle between Satan and the lamb. Can you see the prophetic profoundness of what's going on right at this moment when this controversial man was dying controversially? But, I hear you say, the astute amongst you will be saying, you can't see that from Israel. And you're right, you can't. And the reason being, I'll put in the land, here you go, and we'll put in the atmosphere. The reason you can't see that moon at this moment is because the sun is high in the sky and the moon is behind you. So the people of Israel can't see this. It's the rest of the lost tribes of Israel that can see it all around the world. This prophetic sign is being given to the Israelites wherever they are around the world, just not in Jerusalem at the time. Because everybody who is in that area or region will know what's happening with this controversial man Yeshua that the Romans are killing on request by the Pharisees and the scribes. That beautiful prophetic sign in the balance that we were looking at is for all of the lost tribes of Israel that were scattered around the time when they went to Babylon. And you can read about that in the Word as to how that happened. So Israel doesn't necessarily see this. So anyone who said that, you're right. So there must be a sign for Israel about what they've just done that's profound. Because this is Passover, we need to think about the appointed times. It goes Passover, unleavened bread, straight on the heels of Passover. Then 3 days later, first fruits, when Yeshua rises from the grave. And when he rises from the grave, there are people who are seen coming out of the graves with him. And they are seen in town during a great earthquake. After a great earthquake, the rocks were rent and out of the graves. Those people are Yeshua's first fruit offering he takes to Yahovah in the temple. And Michael Rood does a fantastic job on explaining all of this, and thank you to him. After that, around about 40 days later, Yeshua leaves, and he says, stay here and receive the gift that's coming, the gift of the Ruach HaKodesh, or the Holy Spirit, which comes, as we all know, on Shavuot, or Pentecost, as we call it in the Greek. So after that prophetic fulfillment, the next set of feasts we have, the first one is once again Yom Teruah, and then we have a feast called Yom Kippur. Now, a very fascinating thing happens on Yom Kippur, or had happened for many, many, many years. And that is that on Yom Kippur, let's go forward, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. On Yom Kippur, round about, I wrote it down, Yom Kippur on 8th. This is my marker that I was using. Around about this time of the afternoon, the evening. I'll put in the sky for you. You can see the sun is setting over behind us, and because everything rises from the east all the time because of the Earth's rotation. This day here, if the last one was Passover, it's the perfect time for it. One lunar cycle on is Yom Kippur. This is the way God has set up His calendar in the sky to match His appointed times, to match His prophecy and His word. He's made these all match and align for our purpose in this day. On Yom Kippur, what was done is that 2 lambs, it talks about this in the Tanakh, the first 5 books of the Bible. It talks about how you would take 2 lambs, you'd set one free and you'd kill the other one, the Azazel goat. And what would happen is the Pharisees or the priests would throw the ribbon that they took from around the Azazel goat's neck over the lintel of the temple. And it was a red ribbon. And as the lamb died, a miracle would happen every Yom Kippur, where the red ribbon, would turn white, symbolizing that their sins had been atoned for. Well, because the killing of lambs, bulls and goats had been done away with by the death of Yeshua, and the Pharisees, the priests, the scribes, weren't recognizing this. They didn't recognize that they'd killed the lamb. They were still trying to sacrifice lambs and still trying to get their ribbon to turn white. So on this very next Day of Atonement, this is what rises as their goat should be dying, and their ribbon should be turning white. At the foot of the lamb, not at the foot of the bull or in the balance or anywhere else, at the foot of the lamb that was slain for their sins, rises the blood-red ominous moon. 2 blood-red moons in a row. One on his day of his death, Passover, Pesach, and one on Yom Kippur, or the Day of Atonement. These blood-red moons have punctuated the end of Yeshua's life. They've done it in the Mazzaroth, fulfilling perfectly to the minute the first 4 spring feasts. And that's why we should be celebrating the spring feasts and remembering them, because of what Yeshua did for us on those days. And we need to start thinking, and this is where it gets quite important, we need to start thinking about the 4 fall feasts, because Yeshua said that He was coming like a lamb for the 4 spring feasts, and He's coming back like a lion to fulfill the 4 fall feasts. And if we, the people of Israel, the branches that are grafted into the root of David, scattered amongst the Gentiles, and those of Judah and Benjamin still living in the land today, if we muck up next time as badly as we did the first time, killing our Messiah and not hearing Him for what He had to say, and we killed Him, we muck up again, and we miss Him coming like a lion, we're in trouble. We have got to get back on calendar, Yah's calendar, not some sort of crazy calendar set in place by the very people who murdered Him, not the very people, 300 years on. In 356, that calendar that was set up allowed the Pharisees, the scribes, the priests, to pre-predict times so far in advance they can even do it to this day. And if they can figure that out, then Ha-Satan, Satan, the deceiver, he can figure that out too. He can use your calendar, use the Hebrew calendar, just as well as what the Pharisees could in those days and today. So therefore somebody like Zohar 3 could have been given a prophecy of Twin Towers collapsing to the perfect timing of the Hebrew calendar that was set in place by the principles and precepts of man. And that's why the deception in the Talmud is so great, and why the man Yeshua spent so much time trying to tell us, the people of Israel, not to follow the oracles of the Pharisees, because they are deceiving and they are letting us be deceived into a position currently that has some dire consequences. Has Syria, a war in Syria, Egypt and so on, and a land, Israel. People are deceived everywhere. The Christian church is in absolute chaos around prosperity doctrine and cheap grace, cheapening the grace of what was done here. Have got no idea about the feasts that were told they should keep them as an everlasting covenant. They should keep them every year. You must do this. This is what Yahovah said. Because this is how important it is, and they will be found sleeping when he returns as a lion. And he specifically says to the Christian church that if you are found in this position, you might be cast into outer darkness as one of the morose virgins, to use the actual words. And we need to wake up, all of us, Hebrews, Hindus, Buddhists, Christians, the lot. Because if you can't see the statistical probability, the beautiful picture that was written in the heavens, the statistical probability that one man could have his life punctuated like this. From the very beginning, before any of us were born, even Adam was born, Yahovah made the heavens, and he made it to punctuate a man's life, the heavens, the Mazzaroth, to punctuate to the minute, to the day, to the hour, to his moeds, his appointed times. He made that thing to punctuate his son's life. And there's no Sumerian, Inca, Mayan, their calendars, their kings, their rulers, no Zeus, no Greek, no one has ever been able to do this, have their life be punctuated by the heavens in such stunning fashion by a story that has figures kept across all cultures. There's virgins in every culture up here in the sky, 7 women, so on and so on, lions up there. It's absolutely stunning to me, and the fact that it matches the Talmud, the Tanakh, the Torah, those beautiful books, the foundations of Christianity, and then on top of that, the Septuagint. The Brit Hadashah, the new books, the renewed covenant books. To have his life punctuated by those stories that are in here, despite their translation errors, to have his life punctuated like that is absolutely stunning to me. There is no other man who managed to make his life do that, and that is because he is the Son of God. And it is just astounding to me. So, given the fall feast are coming, you can watch people like Mark Blitz and so on talk about a tetrad event. NASA calls it a tetrad event, where you get 4 blood red moons in a row. And these blood red moons that come rising up like this for us to see, if they happen and you get 4 in a row, that's not actually an unusual thing. A tetrad event happens now and then. The absolutely astounding thing is when tetrad events fall on feast days, because that means Yahovah had to get his barley in Aviv at the right time, and he had to get that matching the Mazzaroth, and he has to get it matching the sun and the moon. And he also has to get it to match what he's promised in prophecy and in his word. So if all of those things are lining up, then a tetrad event becomes something that is so statistically rare that it never happens. It's got something like a 1 in 7,000 year event. So once in during the time of creation. But we've had several of these. We had one in 1967 during the Six-Day War. We had a tetrad event falling around then. We had a tetrad event when the UN allowed Israel back into the land, the tribe of Judah and Benjamin and whoever else wanted to follow. You can see that there was a lunar tetrad event that marked on the appointed times, Passover and Yom Kippur and so on. It's marking the importance of those days. You can see that for your own eyes here. We have possibly, now this is where Mark Blitz and everyone is going wrong, we have possibly got another prophetic tetrad event happening, blood red moon event happening. Because in 2014 and 2015 we don't know what day the barley will be Aviv, and we don't know how to sight the slither of the new moon. And at the moment, people who are following these other calendars need to stop it, because it's a deception. And it's probable, it's likely that those blood red moon events are going to fall on Yom Kippur and so on, and Feast of Trumpets and so on. But we don't know. We just don't know. And we won't know till we get there, and that's the way Yah's planned it, so that Satan can't play silly games with us. And those who are deciding to watch and keep the appointed times like we were told, they won't be in darkness. You know, Yeshua said, I am coming on the day. What day? I am coming on the day. What day did he say he was coming on? What is the day that Hebrews call the day that no man knows the day nor the hour? What is that day called? It's the Feast of Trumpets. Because you don't know whether you're going to see the slither of the new moon rise. So they say it's a 2-day feast. If you're not keeping the feast, you'll be caught. You'll be caught unawares. As Yeshua said, told us, I've come to fulfill. He said, I am the telos of the law. Not the end, I am the focus. I am the purpose of the law. I am where you're looking to. Telos, telescope. To say that he did away with the law is an absolute lie. And we need to know that we should be following those feasts, and that his blood has bought us some time. That's called grace. Some time to get our lives right and in order, and washed and cleaned and following him. That's what his grace is for. And let me show you what happened. You can use the Mazzaroth, just like the Magi were. You can use the Mazzaroth to see what might be coming. And if I take you to 2011, just as an example, we saw this coming. We go to Yom Teruah. It's about the 30th, I think. And we go and have a look at what happened on Yom Teruah. Let me find it for us. Take off this. Here we go. Let me just show you this. Now this is conjecture, but I'll reread to you, after I've shown you this, what it says in Revelation happens again. Revelation 12, if you want to turn to it. Go to Revelation 12. We've been here once before because, like in Hebrew culture, prophecy is always a repetitive thing. It repeats. You can see on the screen, the moon is once again at her feet. Venus, the mother, is with child. There's the child. Mercury's back on her arm. She's clothed with the sun. Okay, so we've got a repeat of this. 2011 Yom Teruah. We know that that was Yom Teruah because we have been following the Bali thanks to Nehemiah Gordon in the land and his Aviv search. And I'll note to you, Mars is up here. Mars is known as the war planet, and we'll follow this pattern. Okay, remember what it said? Now a great sign appeared in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, and on her head a garland of 12 stars. So this is known as the garland of 12 stars, or a crown, a king, crown of 12. With the moon under her feet. There's the moon again, and it's once again a slither. And on her head a garland of 12 stars. Being with child, she cried out in labour and in pain to give birth. And another sign appeared in heaven. Behold, a great fiery red dragon having 7 heads and 10 horns, and 7 diadems on his heads. He drew with his tail a third of the stars of heaven and threw them to earth, and the dragon stood before the woman who was ready to give birth and to devour the child as soon as it was born. So if you're on the island of Patmos, and your name is John, and you're stuck there in a prison writing Revelation, the Greek culture that you're writing to when you say the one that devours children, you're talking of Kronos, the god Kronos, or Saturn, Satan, the one that devours children. In Kronos, it was predicted that he prophesied that one of his own children would overtake him. Okay, so have a look here. Who is in the womb, standing before the womb, waiting to devour the child? Saturn, Satan, Kronos. This is very clear as to what's being spoken of. However, this could be conjecture, and I'm just putting it out there because I'm not such a wise man. But I am noting it like the wise men did, and I am looking out for something happening in the world. The world is descending into chaos. So that's what I'm watching for, and I think I've been seeing that since 2011. At that time there was a comet that came through across Virgo's head, and it passed her eye, so that it put a tail just in here, so that she was crying out for pain. And it was actually the tears coming through her eyes. Now that could be conjecture as well, but you know what I'm talking about. So if we follow the pattern, we can do this whole thing with the Earth again, and there's your slither, your sighting of the slither of the new moon in the evening. Okay, so we've got that Yom Teruah happening again. And remember how we went 9 months? When Yeshua was born, we went 9 months and something came in on the heart of the king. If we look here at Regulus again, we centre on Regulus. Watch this, over the next 9 months, in comes Mars, starts to slowing down, slowing, starts going into retrograde. Yeah, that happens. We've seen it do this a bit. And it comes back. It's not happening in the crab, it's not happening anywhere else. This is happening in Leo, or the lion, the tribe of Judah. It stalls and stops and turns back again. So this is coming into its 3rd pass. Okay, so war was on the king, on the heart of the king, for 3 months. Almost to the day. Sorry, not 3 months, 9 months. Exactly like what happened for the wise men. So in 2012, on that particular date, we are getting a return of prophetic fulfillment. Now, if you are wise and you're watching what's happening in the world, you can see some parallels. Keep watching, people, because this is happening to us right now. And it's possible we're in the straits of Jacob's trouble. Look at what's happening with the war in Syria, with the American people, the government, and so on. With Obama and what's going on in the world. He deceives the whole world, and he was cast to earth, and his angels were cast out with him. And then I heard a loud voice saying in heaven, "Now salvation and strength and the kingdom of our God and the power of his Christ have come, for the accuser of our brethren who accused them before our God day and night has been cast down. And they overcame him by the blood of the Lamb and the word of their testimony, and they did not love their lives to the death." Okay, if my conjecture is right, and I'm trying to be a wise man in 2,000 years on, and lost count of years, because I haven't been watching the Bali over the 2,000 years, but if I'm starting to read and learn how to read the Mazzaroth right, Yahovah just showed me something, a repeat. Something else was born to earth. This time it is not the Messiah, it is Satan, has been born to earth. Around about a year ago, something started happening in the world, and most of you can see, sense and feel that we're heading headlong into something major in the earth, in the world today. And I'm just putting it out there that if my conjecture is right, and the pattern is being repeated. This time, it's not a king on the heart of the king. It's not his son being born. War just happened on the heart of the king, and we have something with us now that is very. We have a man with us on this earth that is beginning to plan and scheme and has but a short time. So I just wanted to show everyone that this Mazzaroth, the Mazzaroth is a fantastic thing. Declares the glory of Yahovah, the glory declared from the beginning, the end declared from the beginning. It's the declaration of his son's life. We've got things coming up. I'm not going to go on, I'm not going to show you more. It's up to you to start looking into the stuff. But what I would say to you is start following the feasts the way Yahovah told you to follow them. Wake up, get out of the church the way it looks at the moment, churchianity, Christianity, if you would call it that. Christians come in all, you can call yourself a Christian if you're following any kind of saviour. Freemasons think, for example, and Satanists think that Satan is their saviour. That's why they call themselves Christians. We've got all sorts of deceptions in the world. Satan's putting Muslims against Christians. He's putting Hebrews against Muslims. He's putting Christians against Buddhists. He's got us all fighting each other, when really we should all just quit it and look up and recognise that something huge and prophetic has been fulfilled, and we should stop being our own gods. And I just want to leave us with that. There's so much beautiful stuff in here. When you acknowledge that you have misunderstandings, paradoxes and failings with this book, then that's a great place to start. And then you can start learning about what it really says and what Yah really says, and not to listen to the principles and precepts of preachers, Pharisees, teachers, mullahs, whatever. Stop listening to them. Start listening to God and what He had to say. Start listening to the beautiful things He's showing you in His heavens, and the beautiful story of His Son, the Lamb who was killed. And yeah, I think that's where I'm going to leave you, and bless you all, and may we truly see peace one day under one ruling king, and hopefully there's not too much bloodshed before then, and that we do repent, and that my brothers Judah, Benjamin and all of the lost tribes of Israel scattered through the world might come to an understanding of who our Saviour is. Yeshua HaMashiach.